Greetings, Hyperboreans. Dave here, the developer of the Hyperborea system for Foundry VTT, back to you with another video. And today we're going to be doing another roll-up feature demo for releases 2.4 and 2.5, which only came a week apart. I did 2.4 and I had a couple of ideas for the next release, and I just went ahead and zipped them out as a kind of an early holiday gift for everybody. And I'm taking a couple of weeks off now at the tail end of the year, not doing any development, and just kind of doing my own thing, actually prepping my own campaign for my players. So having fun with that. But in the meantime, I am in Hua Hin, Thailand right now. My wife and I are here for the month of December, enjoying the quiet beachside life for the holidays. And yeah, so doing a video here, like I said, kind of a roll-up feature demo for releases 2.4 and 2.5. And we had a number of new features and a couple of bug fixes with these two releases. So starting with the actual features that were released, and I'm going to go with the most recent on down to the oldest. So really I'm starting with release 2.5 and then moving back to 2.4. But the first item was I actually migrated the character attribute modifiers to dynamic table lookups. Now that sounds all complicated, but what I mean by that is if we look at, just open up a character here, Alaric the Frank, what I'm saying is all of these modifiers here, from melee mod all the way through feat of strength and all the way down through reaction and turn mod, all of these are now dynamically calculated based on the value of the attribute. So you may recall that up until now there has been a set attribute modifiers button right up here, and it's currently hidden. That button is still available if you disable the dynamic attribute modifier feature. So that is an optional feature. However, I did enable it by default. So when you get the update, that will already be there. And what happens is if I update his dex, let's change him from a 15 to a 12. So I'm just going to do that, and then I have to change focus in order for the browser to sort of recognize that an actual data change has taken place. So I can either hit the enter key on my keyboard, or I can hit the tab key, or I can click somewhere else. I'm just going to hit the tab key. You can see my cursor jump down to Constitution. And you may have also noticed that the base is the number that I can edit. The current is the current number, and this is different now. This is actually another UI change that goes with this. You now have a separate current attribute value, and this is for things like if he was to put on Gauntlets of Ogre Power, and suddenly he might go from a strength of 11 to a strength of 18, something like that. So that's why you have this base versus current attribute value right here. But also, since I changed this to a 12, his missile modifier went down, defense modifier, etc. So I'll go back up to 15 so you can see what it was. So you can see at 15 it's a +2 missile mod, +1 defense mod, test of dex 3, feat of dex 24. Now this is a thief class, so of course his feat of dex is 24. That's in part because of a class feature that gives a +8%. Otherwise that would be a 16. Also his missile modifier, he's got gauntlets of dexterousness. So they're giving him just a flat +1 bonus to his missile modifier. So those of you who know the attribute mods, you know that a 15 should only give you a +1 in your attack roll. Well, he's got these gauntlets that give him a +2. I'm sorry, give him an additional +1, so it makes it to +2. But if I drop this back to 12 now, under the covers, his dex would normally be a missile mod of +0, but the gauntlets are giving him +1. And then, those numbers change. So that's across the board now. I can give him an 18 strength, and you can see all these mods change. And of course, the current changed with it. I'll change it back to the 11 that it's supposed to be. So that is the very first feature. And like I said, that's an optional. So if we go into our options here, configuration settings, Hyperborea, configure Hyperborea. This is under characters and NPCs. And it's right here, auto calculate character attribute modifiers. So if I disable that, save the settings, it's going to reload, and we'll let it go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you that the set attribute modifiers button is now available. So that can be used for those of you who don't want, for whatever reason, this new feature enabled. We'll just let it load up here, zoom in a little bit, open up Alaric again. And you can see there it is, set attribute modifiers, that button is back. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go back here. I'm going to re-enable that feature. Characters and NPCs, check the box right here, save the settings. Yes, we'll let it reload. So the next feature, and this is actually now from release 2.4. So the first one that we just talked about, the attribute modifiers, that was brand new in release 2.5. Now we're going back to 2.4. All the next features are 2.4. So the first feature from release 2.4 was to create an actor sheet for standalone items. Now what do I mean by standalone items? Well, this would be things like essentially an item that you want to appear on a scene on your battle map, as an example. So normally, as you may know, when you look at items, all my items here, like I've got this torch, right? I cannot drag and drop this torch to the map, or I can drag it, but nothing happens. You see, there's no torch appears there, okay? So what I did was I wanted to have a token type, or an actor type, because the token has to be an actor, that I could drag to the menu, but it would actually represent an item, like a dropped torch, or it could be, as an example, the weird Warhammer, which is a summoned weapon, of course. Those of you who know, it's like the old spiritual hammer. Also, there's a scythe spell that does the same thing for necromancers. There's a few summoned weapon spells that are separate from their caster. They attack independently of the caster, like the weird Warhammer does. And I wanted to be able to have that represented on the map because that can move up to 30 feet away from the caster and then start attacking a foe. Up until this feature was released, what you would do is let's say Niella casts the spell. So we'll go ahead and just cast Weird Warhammer. And we'll do that, and we'll let this cast. And then what happens is I have it appear in the chat, and you can see there's a conjured weapon here, Weird Warhammer. I can actually drag that to her character sheet. And when I do, it's going to appear over here under weapons. So if I do that, there we go. The trick here is now, oddly enough, it shows her as having two equipped weapons, but the system then will give an error, and it doesn't like having two equipped weapons at once, so it'd have to unequip. Unless her dex is high enough to double equip weapons, but it's not. You can see it just switched back. Anyway, the point is, normally, since it is attacking independently of Niella, she could be attacking with her standard Warhammer +1 at the same time as the weird Warhammer is attacking by itself. You can certainly do it exactly as I'm showing you here, and Weird Warhammer here, as you can see, is set up as a missile weapon with a range of 30 feet flat, no medium and long range, just straight 30 feet. And you can attack anybody up to 30 feet away. It's got its modifiers, etc., etc. So you can do it that way. But now with this new feature, you can also create an actor type item token, and I'll show you that. We're going to go to actors here. We're going to go create actor, and I'm going to call this, weird. I can't seem to spell at the moment. There we go. And then it's a type item token, just like that. And then I say create actor, and there it is. And then what I can do is I can drag the weird Warhammer to it, just like this. And now it's linked the Warhammer to, not that I did not link Niella's Warhammer from her character sheet. I linked it from here. In fact, the reason you can tell is the fighting ability is still 0. So what I need to do is now I'm going to delete this, because what you really want to do is pull it from her character sheet, because then it pulls in her fighting ability. And that would be like this one here has an FA of 2 because Niella's fighting ability is 2. So what you can do is, let me go back here. I'm going to delete this one. I know it's this one because it doesn't have the fancy icon. But if I just create a new one, I'm going to call Weird Warhammer. We're just going to do that because what you're going to see is when you drag an item to it, it takes on the token, the image, the icon, as well as the name. So let me just get that out of the way. We're going to go to Niella. She's got the weird Warhammer on her right here, right? So now I'm going to drag this onto here. And now, because it's coming from another actor, the system actually adopts her fighting ability, and it brings over her dexterity. Now the armor class and move, not too worried about that, nor the hit points, of course. You could do that for items that have those the numbers. I included them just for that as optional things. But the important part in general for summoned or conjured weapons is to fight on behalf of the caster at their FA, and often with the same initiative. So I gave it the same DX number as her, 12. So it just copies that over when you drag the conjured weapon from the character sheet over to this. So it can adopt that. Otherwise, you could just manually update it too. So I could have just as easily dragged the Weird Warhammer spell from the items under spells. You know, if I had it in here, I could drag it over. And then from there, I could just update manually the FA and DX and you're good to go. It doesn't really matter. Either way works perfectly fine. Okay, so I've already created this now. So I'm going to back out of here because, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Here's the Weird Warhammer that I did, and I gave it a nice icon and stuff. So, and I also made it half size. So by default, it's just going to adopt your medium size. So if I drag this on here, you can see it's going to be a big token, just like that. Okay, so we'll delete that. But I did this one half size. I just did the scale. But now I can move this over here, like I said, and it can attack this skeleton. So if I do that and I bring this up, the way you attack from here is you attack from the linked weapon, just like this. And it's gonna, like I said, use the FA. So we're gonna do a roll here, and you'll see that here it is. It does D20. The item attack modifier for Weird Warhammer at her level is +1. It's using her fighting ability of +2. And of course, there's no range modifier. It's listed as a ranged weapon, but we don't do medium and long range, so it's always a range modifier of 0. And you can see it hit, and then I can roll damage. And you can see also that Weird Warhammer is the attacking sort of character name instead of Niella. So you can see that's what did the damage to this skeleton. So that's pretty nifty, I think. So we did that, and you can also do things like torches. I mentioned that. So if I just pull up if I had a torch here, which I don't, so let's create a torch next. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to call it torch, right? It's item token, all right? So I've got this. Now I've got to go to my items, and I have a torch pre-configured here. Now this torch is set up as a light source. So if you remember, you've got this light source checkbox, and when you check the box, if I uncheck it, the stuff disappears. If I check it, now all this additional light source stuff in the box here appears. So I populated these numbers, gave it a duration, which is about 1 to 2 hours for a torch. I gave it a custom color. And so now I've got this item. When I drag it over here, you're going to see the name. It's already torch. That's no big deal. But the icon is going to update with that light bulb, as you can see. You got item token linked. There's your torch. And now when I go back here, now this is the item, so I have to go to actors. But here's my torch that I just created. And if I drag it down and I drop it right there, suddenly I've got a light source, because Niella or Carrick or whoever dropped their torch. Okay, so that's sort of the reason or purpose of the item actor sheet that was created as this feature. The other thing that went with this was I added the treasure hoard actor type right here. So this is very similar to the merchant. So if I create an actor, you now have treasure. So merchant was a couple of releases ago. Now we've got treasure. And when you create one of those, since I've got one, I'm not going to create a new one, but it's this hoard right here. I called it that. And you can put gold and money in here. You can drag items to it. Everything's on one tab. So there's only the one tab, items and treasure, and everything goes in here. And it sorts automatically. You can see by different types like containers, equipment and items, weapon, armored shield. So it all sorts and groups nicely. And then these items, if you give the players permissions to this hoard, so you'd have to look at configure ownership and give all players owner, and now they can drag and drop from the hoard to their character sheet. So when they actually start looting this hoard, they can just drag items from here right onto their character sheet. So go back to Alaric here, and we'll go over to, and we'll open up the hoard, and you can see I'm going to go here and I'm going to drag this potion of cure light wounds, which there's just one, quantity 1. So I'll drag it on Alaric's sheet. How many to transfer? We're going to do 1. Max is 1. So we do that. You can see the quantity here is 0. It didn't actually delete the item, but it did update the quantity. So nobody else can drag this over. Now if I try and drag another one, you see there's none in inventory. And of course on Alaric, potion of cure light wounds is right there. Now here's the thing. Characters, if someone were to try and drag it back, why would you want to put items into a treasure trove? That makes no sense. So if characters are going to be trading items around, they need to trade between each other. But this hoard does not allow players to drag items from a character sheet into the inventory. As a GM or referee, you can do it from anywhere. You can drag it from, your compendium. You can drag it from your items directory, whatever. But as a GM, I can't even drag from another character sheet. So that's not allowed. I cannot drag from a character sheet, but I can drag from the items directory and from compendia. So that was the other piece. It's not exactly an item actor token. It's a different type. But you can also, because this is still another actor type, just like merchants, you can drag it right onto your map, just like right here. You can see it, my hoard, treasure hoard right there. So now my players can see, oh, hey, there's a treasure chest in the corner. We need to go loot that when we get a chance. Okay? So, moving on. Runegraver spells should automatically deduct 1 hit point per spell level upon casting. So I created Rooney, the Runegraver here. And if we open him up, he's got a couple of spells. And the way this works is, the system is set up such that if you want to cast one of these spells, if you want the feature to work, the 1 hit point per spell level deduction, the spell has to have the word rune in it. Now I have set up all of the Runegraver spells to start with rune, and then the name of the rune, and then the name of the spell that it is. So like the riding rune is the mount spell, the man rune is the command spell. So, but rune is the important part for this, and it looks at the fact that I'm the Runegraver class. So when the system sees a Runegraver's casting a spell, and when it sees the spell has the name rune in it, I can cast this spell, and it'll show that I cast the spell. And if I go to combat over here, you can see my hit points are now 5 out of 6. So it was 6, he was maxed out. The system's deducted 1 for the first level spell. If I do shower, that's going to reduce or remove 2 hit points from him. So we'll cast that. And there's rune shower. And now you'll see he's down to 3 hit points. So that was the next feature. This is all part of version 2.4, release 2.4. Okay, the next feature, second to the last feature, is that thief abilities should be affected by medium or heavy armor. So in the rules, thief subclasses and also some other subclasses like barbarian and berserker and whatever have some, and like monk, which is a cleric subclass, they have some thief type abilities, thief progressive abilities. And there are restrictions on certain of those abilities, specifically climb, hide, and move silently. They take penalties, in fact a -4 penalty on your D12 roll, if you're wearing medium armor. And if you're wearing heavy armor, they're just simply impossible. So if Alaric the Frank, again, he's a thief, so simple, but any of the thief subclasses, anybody who has these restrictions, I just went ahead and gave him, for testing purposes, he's carrying scale mail and plate mail. He's obviously not wearing them right now. He's wearing leather armor, which is light armor, so there's no problem there. It does actually cause his thief agility to go inactive, because that's only for unarmored. But otherwise, it doesn't affect his climb or his hide. In fact, if I just go to climb or hide, let's just fire it up here, climb. You can see there's no situational modifier. It's just going to roll a d12, and it's going to show us whether we succeeded or not here over in the chat. Okay, so now let me go ahead and we'll equip the scale mail, which is medium. Okay, so we've equipped that. You can see the leather armor unequipped. You can see that he equipped the scale mail in the chat. Now if I go over here and I go back to climb, here it is, you can see I've got medium armor -4 penalty. Okay, and so I'm going to roll that, and you're going to see that it's going to take whatever I roll, and look at that, it actually takes that -4 penalty, and you can see it adds it to the die roll, because of course you want to roll low. So in this case my 11 became a 15, and that's an absolute fail. And what did I say it was? Climb, hide, and move silently. So hide does the same thing, move silently does the same thing, but like pickpockets, not affected. It's just those 3, climb, hide, and move silently. Obviously decipher script would not be affected. So let's see. And then heavy armor will absolutely not even allow him to do it at all. So we'll switch to plate mail, heavy armor. You can see he equips the plate mail. Go back over here, climb. Cannot attempt to climb while wearing heavy armor. You see? So again, discern noise, no problem. But climb will not let you, hide will not let you, manipulate traps will let you, move silently will not let you. Okay? So that's the new feature there, and that's part of release 2.4. So we've got that. I'm going to go ahead and switch him back to his leather armor. In fact, I'm going to remove these. He doesn't need to be carrying those. That was just for demonstration purposes. And the last actual feature from these most recent releases was that class abilities like Agile and the defensive ability should apply conditionally. And actually, I just mentioned that. So you remember I said Thief Agility is inactive because it's an active effect, and it's not under inactive, but it's made inactive because he's wearing armor. And this only works, let's see, I have to go into his ability over here. We look at his Agile ability, and we'll just go ahead and edit this. And you can see +1 AC bonus when unarmored and unencumbered. And so what I did was I set up this ability here, and we just go ahead and do this, and we do conditionally apply, and we set up these conditions. So, and now I went through basically the compendium in development, and I updated all these things. But this is also the feature that I had to add. So in order to do conditional application of active effects, I had to create this feature right here. This is brand new, not part of stock Foundry. This is an additional feature that I have added to the active effects, where you can create conditions. You can do all tests, which is both of these must pass, or any test, which is either one or the other must pass, or both, or no test, which means both must fail. You can do any of that logic. And then the test is simply you start with a data path on the left side, which is some value that's part of your character. And then you can see there's a number of different options here: equal to, not equal to, less than or equal, greater than or equal, in or not in. That would be an array of strings. Let's see if I have something like that set up. I think I might. But you can see he has to be, his worn armor type must be unarmored, and his encumbered state must be unencumbered. If both of those are true, then the Thief Agility will remain active. But if one or the other or both fails, then the all tests trigger fails, and this active effect then goes inactive right here, as opposed to going inactive down here. And I did it that way for a reason that gets complicated and has to do with item effects and things like that. So I actually wanted to give the player feedback to say, hey, this is inactive, but not because you did something. It's because of some other effect, and you really should look up Thief Agility and figure out why it would go inactive, and then you can dig into that and figure it out. Okay, so this works for Agile and multiple classes, Assassin all the way through Thief. This works for the Cataphract Skillful Defender ability. This works for the Monk Defensive ability. This works for the Run ability that Barbarians, Monks, and Scouts all have. And it works for the Berserker Thick Skin ability. And that is 5 features from the last 2 releases. The first one was from release 2.5, the character attribute modifiers becoming dynamic, and then the other 4 features are all from release 2.4. And then we also had a couple of bug fixes. So there are 3 bug fixes, in fact. One of them was there was an issue with the enable combat situation modifier. So we've got this feature under combat rules, and it was this one, enable combat situation mod detection. Now you can see this is disabled by default. And what happens is, what this tries to do is it looks at things like token height, if you give your tokens a height or a status effect. So like if I give this skeleton a height, an elevation right here of say 5 feet, because he now has an elevation, if he's standing next to Carrick and he tries to attack Carrick, you're going to see that he's actually going to have a +1 higher ground bonus. That's automatic because I checked that box, okay? So it'll do things like that. Or if I say, let's get rid of the height, but let's say instead that he has gone prone. So with him being prone now, and I target the skeleton, now when Carrick targets and tries to attack him, oops, go to here with my battle axe, you can see defender is prone. He gets a +4 bonus on his attack roll. So that, if you check that box, which I highly recommend it, I know I left it disabled by default because I figured there would be some referees out there who don't want these things going automatic all the time. They want to be able to make their own ruling as to whether or not it's applicable. But if you are like me and you prefer to automate some of the simpler stuff that you're not worried about, managing, check that box and it'll do all that for you. And the bug had to do with a specific temp attack mod for active effects. So it's a pretty edge case, but it was reported by a user who was setting up some active effects for his system, and he ran into this bug, and so I figured it out and fixed it. Let's see. The next bug was that for a very brief period under release 2.4, NPCs were not able to cast spells. And that was actually because of the Runegraver hit point feature that I just demonstrated, hit point subtraction feature. That actually introduced a new bug with NPC spellcasting. So I fixed that with release 2.5. That was part of what drove the release 2.5 coming out only a week later, because I discovered that bug. That was not even reported to me, so apparently nobody else saw it, or if they did, they didn't report it to me anyways, but I found it myself. And then the last one was there was a thing where spells used as at-will powers, like monsters sometimes have a spell-like ability that they can just do whenever they want. However, it would require them to have that memorized if it was set up as a spell on their actor sheet or their NPC sheet. I'm not going to demonstrate it. The point is that's fixed, so it won't be an issue anymore. If you set up a spell, and I'll just show you the spells that I'm talking about. So if we go into spells, of course I don't have any spells. We'll look at Niella's, one of her spells here. We'll just look at it this way. Let's say that her god somehow just gave her Cure Light Wounds as an at-will spell. So what we do is we go into attributes here, and we say consumable, we uncheck that. You can see, leave this item checked unless the spell is being used as an at-will power. So when it's not checked, now the system no longer requires it to be memorized in order to cast it. Now you can see it says 1 right now, so let's actually just edit that and change it to 0. Just like that, or even blank. But either way, I should still... Oh, well, okay, so I have a target that's out of... I shouldn't have anybody targeted. There we go. Now she can cast Cure Light Wounds, and you can see it's not objecting to the fact that she doesn't have any spells memorized, even though I do have the feature enabled to enforce spell memorization. So that's the bug that I fixed, was just the fact that the system was requiring it even if the spell was set up as an at-will power. And I caught that at some random time, and so now that's fixed. You don't have that issue anymore. And now, since she has none memorized, if I try to cast it, you can see it's not memorized, it's not happy, so I now have to go in here and change this to a 1. Well, I guess it already, I think I'd hit this plus and changed it to a 1 already, but now I can cast it. So that is that. And that's everything for releases 2.4 and 2.5. So fellow Hyperboreans, until next time, happy holidays. This is Dave, signing off.